Okay, let's dive right into this explainer by addressing a struggle I think we're all pretty familiar with. Why is it that certain interactions with difficult people leave us feeling just completely, utterly exhausted? You know exactly the feeling I'm talking about. You walk away from a conversation feeling like you've literally just run an emotional marathon. You're questioning your own sanity, and you're left wondering how things went sideways so incredibly fast. Well, today we're going to unpack the hidden architecture behind these toxic power dynamics, and we'll be using some really incredible insights from academic research, psychological frameworks, and somatic therapy to do it. So, I want you to be really honest with yourself for a second. Do you give people too much power over your life? Have you ever noticed yourself just bending over backward to please high conflict people? Maybe you stay silent just to keep the peace. Or, and this is a big one, you apologize when you haven't actually done a single thing wrong. Look, when we do this, we are essentially putting someone else in the driver's seat of our own life. We hand over the keys to our well being and we let their moods, their demands, and their criticisms completely dictate our reality. But why on earth do we actually do it? To answer that, there's this brilliant quote highlighted in a fascinating INSAD research paper we're going to be digging into. Erica Jong once said, "Take your life in your own hands, and what happens? A terrible thing. No one to blame." Man, that hits right at the core of the issue, doesn't it? Taking back our power is honestly terrifying because it requires us to take absolute responsibility for our own boundaries. It means we can no longer point the finger at someone else for making us miserable. We've got to own our part in the dynamic. Which brings us to Section 1, Giving Away Your Power, the Dance of Manipulation. We've got to establish a really hard truth right off the bat here. Giving away our power isn't just something that is done to us. It's more like entering this twisted dance, and it takes two to tango. A manipulator simply cannot manipulate you for long without your compliance. To ground this whole explainer, let's look at this academic working paper from INSEAD titled Are You a Victim of the Victim Syndrome? The author dives into this state of mind where people unconsciously choose misery and, let's be real, forcefully drag everyone else into their drama. Now, to be clear, we are not talking about genuine victims of circumstance here. People with victim syndrome believe they have zero control over their lives, so they take zero responsibility. They constantly complain about the bad things happening to them, and they are incredibly talented at making sure you feel the heavy weight of their misery too. It creates this exhausting, shape-shifting cycle that is just a total mess. One moment, they're presenting themselves super dramatically as the helpless victim. Naturally, you step in as the rescuer because you want to help, right? But the second you offer a logical solution, boom, they morph into the victimizer. They brush aside your advice, they get angry, or they accuse you of just not getting it. Literally nothing you do works. They actively sabotage your efforts to help them, leaving you, the would-be rescuer, completely burned out and frustrated. So you might be wondering, why on earth would someone want to stay stuck in that miserable cycle? Well, the answer comes down to a psychological concept called secondary gain. This refers to the hidden, often totally unconscious benefits that actually keep people anchored in their toxic behavior. Playing the victim gets them pity, sympathy, and a whole lot of attention. It forces other people to swoop in and fix things for them. But honestly, the biggest thing is that playing the victim is the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for avoiding responsibility. Blaming others just provides them with a massive sense of relief. So, what happens when all of this escalates? Let's get into Section 2, the anatomy of blackmail, identifying the archetypes based on Susan Forward's work. First up, we have the Punisher. These folks let you know exactly what they want and exactly what is going to happen to you if you don't comply. They aim their anger directly at you. They might yell, they might make really glaring threats, or they might just sit there in this aggressive, smoldering silence. Their message is loud and clear: cross me and you're going to suffer the consequences. Let's move to the second type and see how this builds. Meet the self-punisher. Instead of threatening you directly, they turn those threats inward. They operate with extremely high drama and constant crisis, totally trapping their targets with their intense neediness. They'll say things like, if you don't do this for me, I'm going to fall apart, or they might even threaten self-harm. They basically make you entirely responsible for their physical and mental survival. And then we've got the third archetype, the sufferer. Oh, these are the highly talented guilt peddlers. They take the absolute position that if they are unhappy, sick, or just unlucky, there is only one possible solution, and that is you giving them exactly what they want. But here is the real kicker. They expect you to read their minds to figure it out. If they're miserable, they make it feel like it is entirely your fault for not knowing how to fix it. Finally, we have the tantalizer. This one is the subtlest and honestly sometimes the most confusing type of blackmailer. They dangle this wonderful prize in front of you. Maybe it's a promotion or family closeness or financial help, but there is always a catch. Every single seductively wrapped package they offer comes with a massive web of strings attached. You only get the prize if you behave exactly as they demand, and somehow they just constantly keep moving the goalposts right when you think you finally earned it. Sounds exhausting, right? Now, all of these archetypes rely on one central weapon to pull off their manipulation. Let's look at Section 3, Lost in the Fog, the blackmailer's ultimate weapon. The really crucial thing to understand here is how they pump this FOG directly into our relationships. FOG stands for fear, obligation, and guilt. They weaponize our fears, like our fear of abandonment or fear of their explosive anger. They constantly test our sense of obligation, really exploiting our belief that we have to be the good daughter or son or partner. And finally, they deploy undeserved guilt like a neutron bomb. They actively pin their own upsets on you, chipping away at your boundaries until you feel absolutely terrible for simply having your own needs. This fog is actually the engine that powers the 6 components of a blackmail transaction. It always starts with a demand. When that demand crosses your boundaries, you naturally feel resistance. So what do? They apply pressure. If you manage to hold firm, they escalate straight to a threat. And right here is where the trap snaps shut. The moment you offer compliance, you practically guarantee repetition. Every single time we give in, we are training them that their toxic tactics work. We are literally rewarding the blackmail. But hey, there is some really good news here. Section 4, Breaking the Cycle, Tools to Take Back Your Power. Think about it. If our compliance is what rewards the blackmailer, then we actually hold all the power to stop the dance. We can totally break the cycle. Let's pivot to some highly actionable tools and specific scripts that you can use to step out of that fog. Normally, when you face a catastrophic emotional threat, your gut instinct is usually to either argue back or just cave in. For example, if they say something dramatic like, "I can't make it without you, I'll fall apart." Instead of getting sucked into an argument, try using this very grounded response. You just say, "I hope you won't do that, but I've made my decision." Notice how non-defensive that is. It doesn't invite a debate, it acknowledges their feeling, but it absolutely refuses to take responsibility for their actions. You are firmly holding the boundary. Okay, but what about when they attack your character? This is a classic move we call the spin. They might say to you, "Why are you being so stubborn and selfish?" Instead of falling for the bait and eagerly defending your character, you neutralize the whole argument. You just calmly reply, "There are no villains here. We just want different things." Boom. By completely refusing to engage with the toxic label they just tried to slap on you, you entirely take the wind right out of their sails. And sometimes the absolute best response is no verbal response at all. When you're dealing with a punisher who uses silent sulking or covert anger to manipulate you, you've got to realize their goal is to make you frantically run around trying to figure out what's wrong. They want you begging for their forgiveness. So the ultimate countermove? Let some things slide. Just leave them alone. Except that you do not have to desperately try to fix their mood. Actually, scratch that. You can't fix their mood because their mood is 100% their responsibility. Now, if you are in a situation where you absolutely have to interact with a highly manipulative or narcissistic person, this next tool is a total lifesaver. It's known as the gray rock method, and it's called that because you literally aim to become as uninteresting and unresponsive as a gray rock sitting out in your yard. You keep your responses incredibly brief, completely neutral, and entirely void of any emotional reaction. Somatic therapists highly recommend this technique because it acts as a very real protection tool for your nervous system. By dropping your emotional output to zero, you effectively starve the manipulator of the emotional fuel they so desperately need to keep the conflict burning. Ultimately, taking your power back requires a massive internal shift on your part. You have got to stop waiting for their approval. As the Think Different Nation article points out, living your life constantly trying to shape the judgments of other people literally turns you into a puppet. You just cannot please everyone. Finding real peace requires shifting your mental focus far away from what others think of you and turning it right back toward your own values, your own needs, and your own well-being. Which leaves us with one final, pretty profound question to chew on today. Are you willing to accept responsibility for your own life so you can finally build true self-respect? Look, it is not easy to step out of the fog. I know that. It means facing a lot of discomfort. It means setting some really hard boundaries. And it means letting go of the illusion that if you just try hard enough, you can fix someone else's dysfunction. But the very moment you stop letting others dictate your happiness, you win back the most important thing of all, yourself. So take your life in your own hands.